uh, Another edition of your informative and discursive program. It is the Global Insight brought to you by Globers, and we continue to look at what it's making headlines, especially across the African continent. We are going to focus this day on Pope Leo the 14th recent visits to the African continent, particularly to the Republic of Cameroon, Algeria, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. And we want to look at the impact of those visits on the leadership dynamics across the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, Pope Leo's maiden visit to Africa as a pontiff has actually concluded. But what happens after this visit remains of great importance to the African people. The Pope's tour of Africa was more than just a religious mission. It created a space to raise key leadership questions across the African continent, especially as Africa grapples with a complex continental crisis and major global geopolitical shifts driven by changing alliances, new rules of cooperation, and evolving diplomatic frameworks that demand broader perspective. The Pope's messages from Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea carried key messages of empathy, reconciliation, intentional leadership, and resistance to modern day colonization and the exploitation of Africa's natural and, of course, human resources. Beyond the speeches lies the challenge of implementation and meaningful change across the African continent. Now, at a crossroads of Africa, governance, accountability, and the future of its leadership in a multipolar world. Thus, the question remains, will this Papa visit inspire major changes in Africa's leadership trajectory, or will it remain a symbolic gesture in a complex political landscape? We engage, ladies and gentlemen, on this edition of Global Insider with our esteemed guest to answer important questions in line with the Pope's visit and the possibility of practical leadership change across the African continent to meet the aspirations of the African people. Join us as we explore the impact, the expectations, and possibility under the theme Pope Leo the 14th Africa Tour. Can it reshape the continent's leadership? And of course, I will join you right after the jingle as we uncover the panel that will give more insight on our topic for discussion this day. Stay tuned. And if you're just tuning in, you are most welcome. Let's let us now uncover the panel, and with pleasure, I'll be introducing to you Professor Layit Zaklami from Algiers University, Faculty of Information and Communication. Thank you, sir, for meeting us this day as we continue to evaluate the visit of the Pope and how this will impact leadership across the African continent. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Clarice. Thank you to the panel. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and we're happy to have you this day to Germany. Let's welcome Presley Akane, International Relations Expert. It's a pleasure having you on this platform this day, sir, as we continue to look into the aftermath of the Pope's visits, particularly on how this will reshape leadership dynamics across the African continent at this complex era around the globe. Your mic is muted, please. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to an insightful exchange with the other members of the panel. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Absolutely looking forward to having constructive exchanges as we continue to evaluate the recent dynamics regarding the Pope's visit and how this is shaping narratives along leadership lines across the African continent, not only in the four countries that the Pontiff visited. And to the United States of America, let's welcome Dr. Elijah Enwako, who is Director of Center for Africa Development. A pleasure having you on this panel, sir.
Thanks for having me, Clarice. It's been a while. I hope that we're going to have a discussion that will elucidate some of the things that the Pope highlighted across Africa. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a discussion with the other members of the panel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you too for making it count this day. The other guests will be joining us subsequently. Without much ado, we kickstart with you, Dr. Elijah Enwako, of course, with the contextualizing topic and having your own holistic analysis of the Pontiff's visit to the African continent and what actually we can make generally from this visit.
I believe the Pope come to Africa carries a lot of hope. The message of the Pope came in different dimensions. I think the Pope wanted to give the people of Africa some hope about what's happening on their continent. It was a message of solidarity. It was a message of peace. He touched on so many things. And if you see the decision to visit a couple of countries, it was a strategic decision. The countries that he visited, it wasn't haphazard. There are different countries with Catholic faithfuls all over the world, on all over Africa, but he did not visit all those countries. He chose where he was going. So it was a strategic move by the Pope to visit particular countries because of the message that he wanted to deliver, message of hope, message of solidarity with the poor, and message of peace in a conflict-torn zone. So I believe the Pope was very categorical in what he was doing. In some places, he denounced exploitation. In some places, he brought hope. In some of the places, he told them that peace should be seen in our actions, not just on speeches and papers. In some of the places, he encouraged dialogue across, people of different faith. You don't need to be, if you're somebody of faith, you don't need to be fighting other people because of their faith. You need to show example of what you are trying to do and let people follow you by your examples, not through the gun or the battle or anything. So he spotlighted, he touched a couple of things, and I believe the issue is what comes next, because we've seen this all across Africa, where people will come. In the case of Cameroon, we saw the Commonwealth Secretary General. He came to Cameroon and tried to see if she could broker peace. There are a lot of discussions. It went to Bamenda, it went all everywhere, it went to Yaoundé, and then when she left, nothing happened. We saw the message of the Secretary General. His representative came to Africa, came specifically to Cameroon, tried to see how they can broker peace. A lot of discussion, exchange of gifts and all whatnot. He left, nothing happened. Now we're having the Pope. He has come with message of hope and all that. Now he's gone. We hope that that's not going to end like the other people that came and delivered a lot of messages. So again, he came with a lot of good things: hope, solidarity, peace, addressing economic exploitation. He focused on the marginalized people. He talked about reconciliation. We're hoping that if they could, the other politicians that came, if their colleagues who are politicians in the continent of Africa did not listen to them, at least they will listen now to a man of God who is bringing a message of hope and solidarity, and also bringing a message of God. If they don't fear man, at least let them fear somebody who represents God, because it's becoming a situation where Africans are almost hopeless, honestly speaking, Clarice, because people have come to the continent of Africa. They have talked about these issues. They have, brought people together, but the powers that be, for some heaven's sake reason that we do not understand or don't know, the same thing continues to happen. It's as if they've been pouring water on a dead's back all these years, and we are not seeing change. So we are hoping that at least with the Pope coming this time, people are going to sit and appeal to their conscience, because this is a man that is appealing to your conscience. He's not coming appealing to gun blazing and this and politics and all whatnot. He's not bringing the politics of his country and say you should do as I'm doing. He's just appealing to the conscience of the leaders of Africa and said, please look into your conscience and see, is there a place in your heart that can be soft enough to say, these people have suffered enough in war. People have died enough in war. There's been devastation of the economy of the people. Even those who are not fighting have been affected by what is going on in your countries. Can you appeal to your conscience and see if you can do something about it? On the case of exploitation, he's told the African leaders, those who are exploiting do not come to Africa and tie their hands. You enable them. Can you look for some place in your heart and your conscience to say, we cannot continue to sell our countries to foreign exploiters. We cannot continue to, allow our people to be taken advantage of. We have resources, we have minerals, we have all these things. Then you have foreigners who are coming over to take these things, and we continue to let that happen. Can we find a place in our conscience to say, enough is enough? That was the message of the Pope. Now it's up to the African countries and their leaders to say, are we still humans? Do we still have a conscience? Do we still have a soul? Can we look into what the Pope, the man of God from Rome, is saying to us? If that happens, then I believe that we might see some change. But if they continue on the same path, where leaders from different countries have come and appealed to them, even politically, and said, this is not working, and say, look at your economies, look at these things that you're doing, is devastating your economies, and so on and so forth, and they're not listening to them, we hope a man that has come with God, talking about God and conscience and so on, we hope that these people will listen to them, Clary. So in a nutshell, I want to keep our hope, but again, our hopes have been dashed all over the years, but again, let's keep hoping and believing that one day things will change for the better.
Things will change for the better. Coming to you, Presley Ekane, in our preamble, we highlighted for sure that the African continent stands at a crossroads where we look at items like principles of governance, accountability, especially in the world that has become very complex at this moment. And today we're looking at the Pope's visit as a meeting of a religion and some sort of the political stakeholders of the African continent. Can this, of course, bring about sustainability or sustainable leadership dynamics to meet the changing dynamics of the African continent at this juncture? Having your own general, analysis, what came to mind when you heard that Pope Leo XIV was visiting the African continent, and of course, choosing of the 4 countries which we just highlighted is Cameroon, Angola, Algeria, and Equatorial Guinea?
Thanks once more for inviting me on your program, your platform. When I heard about the Pope's visit, um, it was with a mixed feeling because I'm one of those who has held on to some optimism when it comes to the next generation of Africa. But also, in as much as I preach optimism, the power of pessimism holds strong on the continent, especially on the governing body, the governing structures of our continent. Regarding the four countries, it was clear to me that it was a strategic choice. We have three countries: Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea, who constantly display of authoritarian rules, failed democratic structures. We have old leaderships, and in the case of Cameroon, which is much at the turning point of its history, we have an aging system where the constitution was reviewed, amended, with the possibility of a son taking over leadership of a father. The same reality operates in Equatorial Guinea, and we have Angola. That will be having its presidential elections next year with an elections which many think would be the most competitive in the history of that country, with a high risk of electoral disputes if the results are contested. And then we have Algeria too, which is dealing with its own wars. So we had the Pope coming wearing two hats: the hats of a leader of a state called the Vatican, but also the hat of a preacher man. We have to highlight that the Pope is a missionary priest and has worked extensively in Africa. So he clearly knows the ground on which he was coming, and he knows the people he was dealing with. And in the context in which we were, or in which we are, I don't think the message of reconciliation, the message of peace building, the message of justice, it's a new message. We've had political leaders, we've had leaders of international organizations, of multilateral organizations that visit Africa on several occasions, and in many times they have spoken on cooperation ties. It's been always a bargaining discourse, like, this is what we're giving you. But we had in this case a missionary who was not coming to bargain anything. It was not a diplomatic charm offense. It was someone speaking from a moral sense, and we think, as Dr. Elijah said moments ago, we are hoping that this message would trickle down. Personally, for me, I don't think the message was intended to the present rulership structure in Africa. It's for the new generation. And that's why one of the most beautiful images I take from the Pope's tour in Africa or in Cameroon is a little girl running into his arms. And for me, I said, that's the future, because these messages have fallen so many times on the ears of African leaders. Hardly have we seen any major change in the way we treat each other, in the justice system, in the democratic system. And just a few days after the Pope left, the reality is still there. The reality is still there. It's not like people are still languishing in jail, arrested unjustly. The justice system is biased. The justice system is it's for the rich. We still have poor democratic poor governance in these countries. So we are hoping that this message would at least, if not touch the governing class that we have in Africa today, we hope that it gets down to the future of Africa, the next generation, those who expect to bring about changes in our systems.
Indeed, bringing about changes in our system, and of course, what can we take of a message of empathy, reconciliation, and of course, a strong message that resonated along the lines of leadership, calling for a people-centric leadership that will actually provide sustainability and development. And in the same light, we are going to hear from Professor Laid Zaglame, noting that, of course, Algeria was the first country that Pope Leo XIV visited, and of course, a very historic and significant visit, given that though Algeria has a huge number of Catholic Christians, the country is also made up of the Muslim community. So here we saw some sort of a meeting point between an interfaith meeting point. So, Professor Light, holistically, what impact did the Pope's visit leave in Algeria, and how do you think this can actually transcend along the leadership dynamics, not just in Algeria, but across the African continent?
Thank you once again, Khalid, for inviting me. My regards also to the member of the panel. I think in Algeria, which is the only Muslim country that was part of Pope Leo XIV visit to Africa, it's an exceptional one, because from the mouth of the Pope himself, he said he is inspired and by the tolerance that is prevailing in Algeria. And of course, Algeria is fully Muslim country with around 9,000 Christian only. But the visit of the Pope to Algeria, because of the legacy of the history of Algeria, because we fought our independence, and that's why Pope said in his own terms, he owes Algeria respect and admiration for fighting to recover its independence. That has to be said. Secondly, he admitted, or he acknowledged that why he came here, because Augustin was, of course, was born in Algeria. This is many centuries ago, and he was born in Soukaharas, which is in the east part of Algeria, and he was the promoter of Christianity. More than that, he built up. He was promoting common sense, rationality. Good practice, respect, and so forth. More than that, we have a church under his name in Annaba, east of Algeria, which is called Bona. So that is to explain that Algeria is of course inherited the legacy in its long history with the presence of Christianity, then the different religion, different I would say civilization, Numidian from Greek, from Roman, from Ottoman Empire, Turkish, then from France. So the accumulation of all these foreign presence in Algeria, it happened that it's an added value for Algeria now to be proud of being a land of tolerance, a land of forgiveness and cohabitation. And he was very pleased with the welcome he was given when he arrived here in Algeria. Let's make it clear. The visit of Pope to Algeria is not to promote Christianity or Catholicism or whatsoever. No, it's already, we are land of Islam for many centuries. So what is I think positive about Algeria is that we accept we admit the tolerance, what we call dialogue of religions, dialogue of civilization, and we don't fight for a clash of civilization as it is promoted by the American scholar Samuel Huntington. So here in Algeria is the birth of, the land of tolerance. And of course, if I look now at his tour to many countries in Africa, as our colleagues have already mentioned, in Cameroon, of course in Angola, in Guinea-Bissau, and so forth, I think here we have to accept what is the part of religion in everyday life. That's exactly what is going on, and it looks as nowadays, unfortunately. That's my perception. In Africa is affected by of course mismanagement, by bad governance, by corruption, and needless to as a matter of fact, we have to remember what he said when he arrived to Cameroon and praised the leaders of this country to stop of course, abusing of people's liberty, people's freedom, and of course to stop corruption and all these kind of things. And it is important to mention that he spoke about election rigging. So that are aspects. That's a real problem that Africa faces. And of course, he has no authority, if I say so, and only a moral one, but nothing powerful that they can impose his discourse and say to them, please do stop rigging election, do stop this and that. His discourse is oriented to their faith, to their heart, to their mind, to the people that they have to take into consideration all this and how to solve it. In the case of Cameroon, we know for many years there is a rift between English-speaking part and French one, and I don't think that the visit of 1 or 2 days of Pope 14 will solve this issue. So it's a moral message to these people and to adhere to the religion he is advocating. But overall, unfortunately, I am quite. Of course, I am quite not happy about what is happening in my continent. But more than that, at least Pope Leo XIV, he has been an outspoken one, because why? He defended the human rights. He asked for the end of war between, of course, and the aggression of Israel and Iran and Israel and USA against Iran. So, and that's why American president was not happy. There was a big row between them. So here again, we should understand we have to pay tribute to Pope Leo XIV for being an outspoken person, for saying what we should do on moral values of helping each other, of promoting and spreading peace and tolerance. That's exactly the message. Now, if the message is heard by everyone, sure, it's a clear message and an outspoken one, but the problem is the reaction of those who are the believer, but more importantly, about the leader of this country, which have been the country which he visited. If they get the message to hope that with the leader, because those who have power, the decision maker, will accept his message, which is of course evidently moral, but we don't expect from him to bring army and any I would say power to impose, but it was more a powerful I would say a moral value, a moral power. That's what we should be grasped by the whole public in Africa.
Absolutely, and of course, bringing us to point of reflection. I will come back to you, Presley Kane. In your introductory statement, you quite made some examples about Cameroon, and we want to contextualize it and ask this question: if the Pope's visits or the aftermath can come to some sort of a compromise between the moral compass and the political trajectory of the country, Cameroon, to be particular in solving the Anglophone crisis. This is something that has been ongoing for years, and when you saw the euphoria, especially in the northwest region of Cameroon and Bamenda, to be precise, it actually sent a key message of a people that are hopeful, wanting to leave the lost glories of that region for close to a decade now. So how can we actually have some sort of an intercession of the moral compass and the political willpower in solving this crisis that has held the country some sort of hostage, if I should use the term? And of course, what is the practicality or maybe the new impetus that we can see in the leadership ongoing, and probably in the one that is yet to be unveiled as we continue to navigate the fragile political scene of the country?
Thank you once more. I particularly do not like to be bleak. I do not like to be bleak when I'm discussing African political issues or Cameroon political issues. But I think the Pope's visit to Cameroon was actually the last act of the game. It was the last act of the game. And why am I saying so? We are dealing with the system. We are dealing with the government, where most of the governing class in Cameroon today are products of Catholic systems, from Catholic boarding schools to Catholic schools, including the president of the republic. It means those are people who inherited a certain kind of morality from the Catholic doctrine. And fast forward, independence, post-independence, we have a government which is predominantly controlled by products of the Catholic system. And then we have experienced the evolution of Cameroon in several facets. The violation of rule of law, the silencing of dissent, the arrest of journalists, the double morality where you say vices as homosexuality is not accepted, but you have somehow the president of the republic's daughter who officially throws herself to the public as a member of the LGBT community, and you have people of the lower class, if I should say so, who would only be suspected of having such an orientation and find themselves in jail. So we have politicians who have come. We've had members of international organizations who have come, and like I said earlier, they've always come with, like we always say, a hidden agenda. Using the carrot and using the stick at the same time. In this case, no, we have a preacher man. We have a preacher man who came to Cameroon days ago and who focused on our morality. The message was a moral one. When he said you have to fight for your justice, when he said peace is not just spoken in words, but peace is expressed in actions. He spoke to these people right in their core, right on their front doors, right in their faces. The question is, after the Pope's visit, what happens? These are things that should not even wait. There is no discourse about the many Anglophone leaders who have been locked or incarcerated in jails in Cameroon. There's no further discourse about people who have been wrongly arrested. There is no further discourse about politicians who have been who are in jails in Cameroon without of fair justice, fair trial. So I am particularly speaking at the loss. I'm speaking at the loss because I do not want to be pessimistic, but the current system, current government, as the one we have in Cameroon, is not one from whom we are expecting any major change, or it's not one government who I think received the Pope's message with grace and with the possibility that they would engage some kind of inclusive dialogues, because these narratives, we've had them in a long time. We've had inclusive dialogue. We've had dialogue and reconciliation. We've had these discourses. We've had people come. We've had people, members of this international civil society, members of international who work in the international humanitarian sectors. We've had high-level politicians from the United Nations organization who have extended a hand of peace, have offered the possibility to discuss peace, to broker peace, to mediate. But we're still in a chokehold, and I want to think that the Pope was just the last offer to us, to that regime, to the regime in Yaoundé. The Pope was the last offer. And if his message is not acted upon swiftly and immediately, then I don't think what else could salvage that system. Mm-hmm. And then you could even be almost at the point of calling such system, failed states. Because I took time, I listened to this Pope's message, I looked at the Cameroonian people, I look at the youth, I look at the civil society, and I asked myself the question, what else do we need? And unfortunately, I'm at the point where I'm just watching. I'm watching to see what happens, but I really have little or no hope as far as the current Cameroon government is concerned.
Let me stay with you, Mr. Ekane. You quite cited a whole lot of things that the Cameroon government actually has to do to be able to solve some of the problems, particularly that of the Anglophone crisis. But then, according to some pundits, Cameroon actually is in a state of quagmire as far as solving this problem is concerned. We have on the other hand the government, and then the other hand we have the perpetrators of this, those who have taken advantage of the Anglophone crisis to bring more misery to the restive regions, and also affecting the country as a whole, and of course aspects of disinformation and misinformation. And now looking at this moral message which you just highlighted, what can we gain from this message of empathy to bring all of the stakeholders together and ensure that there is probably a starting point of a new phase of practical resolution of the internal squabbles and some of the political problems that the country is facing?
I think when we talk about the African reality, or in particular the Cameroon reality, we are locked up in the prison of our own creation. So it's not just a focus on the governing class. Mm-hmm. It's a focus on us as the people. So that message was not only thrown to the Cameroon government, it was thrown to the separatists. It was thrown to you and me. Mm-hmm. It was a time for us to look at ourselves, to do a reality check and stretch out the hand of justice, the hand of peace, and to reclaim a lost moral compass for far too long. So that message was not just for the Cameroon rulership class, because they would pass. That the president would pass, the president of the Senate would pass, the president of the National Assembly would pass. But what would remain? What do we want to bequeath on the next generation? Is a question we have to ask ourselves. And that should be expressed in how we treat each other, in how we practice democracy, in how we engage peace talks, in how in simply put in what in how we want to leave Cameroon to the next generation, how we want to leave Nigeria, how we want to leave Angola, Equatorial Guinea to the next generation. The Pope's message was clear. When a human being, one person, would swindle and embezzle $50 billion, 50 billion CFA francs, what do you want to achieve with such an amount? When you would build hospitals in France, in the UK, and then you don't have medical facilities in your country, what moral compass do you have when you practice a double system of justice, where the rich can buy freedom and can buy their way, even if they are accused of certain mismanagement or swindling public funds, and then the rich and then the poor finds himself in jail for very petty issues. What is left of our morality as a people? So it was a time in that church, in that space, it was a place of covenants where the Pope was speaking. It was a place of covenants where we had to look at each other as a Cameroon community and ask ourselves deep questions. What do we want to leave to the next generation? When we thwart elections, what do we want to teach the next generations? Where we parade bodies, or even on our social media, how we treat our social media, we show naked bodies, dead bodies on the streets. What message are we showing to the next generation? So that's why I said this really was the last act. The Pope's visit was the last act to this generation. And like I said, there is hope. There is hope. And that's why I'm a practicing Catholic. And when I saw the Pope, for example, embracing this little girl, and I said, "Hey, this message. This is next generation. That's the next generation, and we have to start teaching that on dinner tables. We have to learn our civic education, knowing that these little things we have to start doing them." Knowing that you cannot steal, you cannot hurt, you cannot kill. These basic practices is what builds a nation. That when I take 50 million, what is left for the community? When I swindle money aimed at building pipe-borne water or potable water in the community, and I have to use it alone, how many people are left suffering? These are basic questions we have to ask ourselves.
Absolutely. And of course, the civic responsibility. How can we build a generation that will also unveil a new, style of leadership that will ensure practical and sustainable development? And of course, with you, Dr. Elijah Enwako, from what Mr. Ekane just said, we will be looking at one aspect, asking if actually it is the reason why Africa, especially Cameroon, still remains at this very vulnerable state, or if there are other reasons. We try to analyze and understand the way forward, especially now that countries are re-strategizing. I think it is wise to say this time that it is the strategy that is actually working at this juncture in line with the policies regarding internal and external policies. Now, the question goes to, some sort of political complacency among politicians across the African continent. Do you think this is the sole reason why the leadership of the continent has failed largely to meet the realities, or probably to meet the expectations of the population? Remember, we know Africa as a cradle of humanity. Africa has a reservoir of natural resources, which you highlighted, and it's human capital that we cannot downplay at this juncture. Is political complacency a problem to poor leadership? And if yes, what parameters can we use to actually change the dynamics in line with governance and leadership across the African continent?
Clarice, thank you for your question, but I love to be practical here. And let's go back to something that Ikane was talking about, the case of Cameroon, for example. When the Pope came, it's good to listen to the people on the ground. When the Pope came and left, you listen to people like, is it Cardinal Kia from Bamenda? He made a statement that should ring home what the issue is. He said, there are people in Cameroon who do not want the conflict to stop because their political survival depends on the conflict to continue. That's the crux of the matter. In 2016, when this thing started, it started as an agitation for good governance within the Northern and Southwest. It started as an agitation for self-governance. It didn't start as war. But what was the method that were used to resolve that issue? It was met with fire and so on and so forth. It was mismanaged. And then it escalated to all these opportunistic people calling themselves separatists, whatever you call them. They took over control of the whole thing. And we're where we are today. And then you have people who are utilizing on both ends, both the separatists and the government, utilizing the situation to either enrich themselves, to make sure that they can continue to be in government, or those who are in government, the people in government whose survival as politicians depends on making sure that this conflict continues. That's exactly what it is. Can you hear me, Clarice? It looks like I'm frozen.
No. Yes, we can hear you, sir. Go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
We can
Yeah,
hear you.
it doesn't look
please.
like
Right on.
I can hear you too.
Yeah, it looks
Right on, Dr. Elijah Inoko. We can hear you 5 on 5.
okay. So I was saying, the Pope message hits. Go ahead. Oh, thank you. So as I was saying, the Pope message, it was quite clear. It's up to the people of those countries, whether you're talking about Angola, you're talking about Cameroon, or whichever country he visited. His message was quite clear. He said, reject violence, reject hatred, reject war, because these things will kill your economies. These things will destroy your economies. Now you ask about political complacency. There's a reason why those politicians are complacent. Take the case of Cameroon. People went and organized what they call the sovereign national dialogue. But who were they dialoguing with? You have separatists who are fighting. You have people that were in jail who are leading those organizations. Then you gather a bunch of CPDM people and those in government and a few others and say you sat in Yaoundé and then you are dialoguing. When two parties are fighting, you dialogue with the two parties. You don't take one party and a bunch of other people who are not even fighting those wars and then you say you are dialoguing. That is what we are talking about. People do not want to take this conflict. They do not want to resolve this conflict because they know what they're benefiting from. And it's unfortunate that the government of Cameroon knows this and they allow these people to begin to continue to siphon the funds of the nation in order to fight a useless war. This is a complete useless war because this thing can be resolved tomorrow. Call those guys, call them on the table and say, what are you fighting for? These are Cameroonians, whether you like them or not. These are Cameroonians. And some of the things that they are talking about, they might be erroneous, but you don't throw them under the bus. You don't pick guns. You don't kill them. You don't burn houses. You don't call them enemies in the house. You don't do that. That's not how you resolve a conflict. Let's look at the cases where there have been conflict on the continent of Africa and see how they've been resolved. We find, a country like Ethiopia, where the northern people, Tigray in the north, they pick up arms against the government. The government had all the power to crush the Tigray. But the government of the country looked at it and said, if we take the resources of our country and, we channel all these things into this war, at the end of the day, we're not going to be ruling a country. We're going to be ruling shambles. The government brought these guys down on the table. They sat down. They discussed. And it was still the same similar situation that we have in Cameroon. It was an issue of autonomy of the northern provinces that was at stake here. So the government brought these guys to the table and said, what do you guys really want? They said they want autonomy. They didn't want to separate. They want autonomy. The government had to devolve some of their powers and give them this autonomy, and they're still part of the country. I mean, and the economy of Ethiopia is booming. That's what we talk about, politicians with conscience. The Pope was just appealing to the conscience of these people and said, this issue can be resolved very easily tomorrow. That's why he made a statement that peace is not in slogans, it is in action. Your action should demonstrate peace. The Pope did not want, he didn't have to, he was very diplomatical, but the message was quite clear. He said, if you want peace, you should take actions that lead towards peace. You can't be making, speeches and here and there, you're talking about peace. He talked about justice and human dignity. If you look at the people that made speeches in Cameroon, that is a reflection of what was going on. People were very candid. The Reverend Sister talked about separatists that kidnapped them and how they were just doing their job. Then you have a gentleman that talked about how burning houses in Cameroon, and they have people in their room who are not here. So it's not complacency, it's complete political corruption and rejection of peace because people are benefiting from the status quo. There are people benefiting from what is happening in Cameroon. The government is spending big. That money could have been going for electricity. That money could have been going for education. That money could have been going for many other social services that the country deeply, deeply needs. But they're not doing that. They prefer to continue to fight a useless war, spend billions of dollars, go to Exim Bank, borrow huge sums of money to come and fight war, go to the World Bank, borrow huge sums of money, and they say they are doing this and doing that. But we know where the money is going. The money is going to buy military equipment to fight a useless, completely useless war. So it is not an issue of complacency, it is an issue of lack of the political will to resolve the conflict. They do not want to resolve the conflict. If they want to resolve this conflict tomorrow, it will be resolved. So the Pope was quite clear. He was appealing to their conscience and say, gentlemen, your country is going down the drain. Stop all this political maneuvering and solve the
Absolutely, actually, which is a very
move ahead. This is what I want to say here before I hand over the microphone to my next colleague.
okay.
If the Cameroon government is sincere on resolving this conflict, they should bring these separatists to the table. These grandstanding of saying that you cannot negotiate, you call them terrorists, you can call them any name you want. But at the end of the day, peace is negotiated on the table. It's not negotiated in the bush. It's not negotiated with guns battle. Look at even the United States today. The United States is fighting Iran. But peace is being negotiated on the table. It's not being negotiated at the Strait of Hormuz. They are talking with those same people. So it doesn't matter what you call them, separatists, terrorists, or whatever it is. At the end of the day, you need to bring these people to the table and say, what do you want? What is the issue? Some of their demands may be extreme. We understand that. You look at the good, you look at the ugly, you look at what you guys come to a consensus. But this idea of standing on the pedestal and say they are terrorists, they are this, we can never talk to them. Those words are used by people that want to continue to plunder the country and send the country into the drain. People who want peace will bring these guys to the table and talk peace, and we will have peace in Cameroon.
Absolutely, yeah. We will need peace, and I think it will be in leadership that will derive a more practical political communication and also diplomacy in conflict resolution that will mitigate the number of wars that we have, noting that Pope Leo XIV actually said that wars do not actually end. Of course, problems, or it's not a solution to problems. We have seen naturally that wars are actually, tools used by stakeholders to attain objectives, be it at the personal level, at the level of the country, but then at the expense of the vulnerable ones. And it is actually a message that is being sent forth to their population, actually to be more concerned and engaged and be certain about what is actually imperative. It's often said that peace is not the absence of war, but of course, peace is actually either, as some people will say, either bad peace is better than war that even have some sort of a clear trajectory. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just tuning in, you're most welcome. And we continue the discussion of leadership with our guests this day. We still go to Algeria with you, Professor Layit Zeglami. When we listen to all that has been said, it means that the solution to the problems affecting either Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, or any other countries across the African continent will come from within. I will quote the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, who has always said that we need African solution to African problems, and whole leaders have also highlighted, stress on that slogan. But then, what is stopping the continent, its political leaders, and the major stakeholders on the decision-making table from foretelling out the problems? To quite note that over the years, the past years, Pope Francis visited the African continent, and we saw how he demonstrated empathy by kissing the feet of the leaders of South Sudan, just to tell them that they should solve the political squabbles, and of course, and give reason to South Sudanese to live. And we still saw Pope Leo XIV carrying that same message of empathy, all in humility, urging leaders not to be lost for power. And I think this is a statement that actually has to be, elucidated to be able to bring about practical analysis that will solve. I don't know if it's practically or theoretically some of the problems here, Professor Layit. We are looking at how the new leadership reforms, which you think can be implemented across the African continent to reduce some sort of, discontent among, eligible voters. We're talking about term limits. We're talking about transparency. We're talking about accountability, and some of these, issues that will actually pacify the Africans and give them hope for a better tomorrow for the continent's vibrant young population.
Yes, you are right, Clarice. I think what is happening now throughout the continent, and this is my perception, there is somehow, I would say, a separation between what is politics and what is religion. And it looks like as religion has been confined to practical, personal use, is not part of the politics of any government in Africa. So the separation of politics from religion has led to this divide within the country itself, for instance. And that's why the power and the clout of religious values are almost neglected, though if we look, as you said, of some values that are promoted, that are, of course, adopted by African Union, for instance, when we speak about good governance, the key element and the key basis of this are, of course, transparency, are accountability, are good management, and of course, besides that, you have the law. and the law has to be strictly implemented. But here we are, you have a decision maker who are here to embrace the law themselves, and whether it comes to election rigging, whether it comes to this kind of, I would say, mismanagement and corruption and so forth. Sorry, but overall, I don't think the message of good governance, I would say, the values of good governance and accountability and good leadership and so forth are implemented throughout the whole continent. There are words and there are deeds, and that's exactly what is going on. And if we are somehow focusing on what is happening in Cameroon, Cameroon is a good example of international interference. From one side, the French, as I said, the French speaking parts and the English one. And for sure, one way or the other, France and Britain want to keep this situation, it's a fragmented one. That's for the interest for their own interest. Otherwise, why don't they do agree English and French community in Cameroon to agree and sit together? We have the example of in Algeria, 1990. Let's make it clear. 1990, we had violence and act of terrorism. Of course, we blame each side is blaming each other, but we knew at the end of the day, those who are suffering are the Algerian people themselves, but they are at the mercy of foreign powers, which are one way or the other imposing or helping to fight each other. But the solution, we fought each other for 10 years, and we had about 250,000 casualties. That's exactly. But they want to blame us that we are terrorists. We are not state terrorists. The terrorism was introduced by those who want to keep us fighting each other. And I don't want to name any countries, but how to solve this issue? We solve it by giving hand to each other and by, of course, shaking hand, and through what we call forgiveness, then tolerance, then national reconciliation. That's exactly the solution. If there is a real will and real motivation to solve the problem and to set a peace, we have to speak to each other without any, I would say, stigmatization or vindication or something like that. You should, even even he is your foe, your adversary, you should speak to them. You should talk to each other, but on the ground of mutual respect. And that's what makes country more solid, more powerful. So in the end of the day, you have to come to the idea of living. There is no other opportunity but to talk to each other. When I was student in UK, I was following the problem of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and they were fighting for each other between Irish Republic Army and the British Army for many years.
Unfortunately, we lost Professor Laida. He would join us.
In Africa, that's exactly, we should learn from their own experience. And that's what is required from us.
Indeed, that is what is required from us. Do you think, Professor Laid, that servant leadership or people-centric leadership is the philosophy that can solve a majority of African problems, because the leaders are at the center of decision making? Can people-centric leadership be a solution to some of the moral problems, or even the many problems that Africa is facing today?
Yes, I think what I have noticed, unfortunately, or fortunately, unfortunately, I would even say, throughout the continent, the power or the contribution of what we call the elite, philosopher, expert, analyst, and so forth. They are left out of the stream. They are not invited to contribute to contribute. They are not committed to solving the issues. So there is somehow a powerful monopoly of politicians who are, I don't say all of them are greedy or are just egoistic, but they just look for their own interest. And of course, here we have to blame the civil society, which has not been active to contribute, to give its help, its support to solve these issues. So we should not leave the country at the hands of some powerful, some greedy politician who try to run the country as its own property, as its own. This is completely wrong. So we should not just criticizing this or that without doing anything, without contributing. That's why now we have to think. Of course, I am not asking for revolution, but I am asking some kind of partnership, some kind of listening to each other. And here again, we have to revalue, to reconsider the virtue of communication, of understanding, of hearing each other, of comprehending each other. These values are completely neglected, and no one is listening to it. Not only listening, not only hearing, but not understanding at all. They just listen, but they don't understand. Because if you understand what the other, the opposite say to you, for sure you comprehend, and then you change your mind and you get a positive reaction. This is basically what is left. We have, unfortunately, in I don't want to name any country, but we have some countries in Cameroon or in other countries. We have leaders who have been there for 30, 50, 40 years. Can you imagine that? I read that 2 days ago, why the Pope Leo XIV didn't visit Congo, Republic of Congo, because this president has, I don't know whether he arrested or killed one of the cardinal in Congo. So you know, the problem is you have to understand that power should not remain in one person for endlessly. No, we should, and this is what makes people furious, and of course left out of any contribution to introduce more democracy. But what they do, they keep religion as their personal faith, and even for the interest of the politician, they don't want to mix with this religion, and they want to separate politics from religion.
Clarice, can I
Thank
follow
you
up on
so
something
much.
Professor Light?
Okay, Dr. Elijah, just go on, please.
Yeah, I think he laid out a very important point, which I want to highlight. The point of foreign powers coming to Africa and trying to use divide and conquer. But I want to go further to say that we Africans, we have to emancipate our minds and ideas. Nobody will come to my house and come to divide me and my wife. If me and my wife, we do not give him the key to our house and say, come in, we tell him what's going on with us, we give him all our secrets and this. That is where we give access to that person to destroy our family. Africans need to emancipate. The wars that are happening on the continent of Africa are sponsored from abroad. But those people manipulate Africans to fight against one another. He talked about Algeria, for example. The weapons that were used are weapons that are bought from abroad, and they were being manipulated to say, oh, this tribe is an enemy to this tribe, or this group is an enemy to this group, and this one. It is the same thing all across Africa. Whether you're talking about Cameroon or whichever one, it is the same thing. These people do not come and fight the war for us. They use us, turn us against our brothers and sisters and say, your brother is the enemy. Your brother is the problem. And then we begin to fight among ourselves. Go to Democratic Republic of Congo today. When we are talking about the M23 and the other people, these are people of the same nation buying weapons from Europe, fighting and killing themselves. And today we are talking about millions of people that are dead in that country. What are they fighting? They are fighting for the minerals that are existing in that country. But at the end of the day, they are not the one exploiting those minerals. They are fighting and killing themselves. Europeans are coming in and exploiting those minerals and taking them to Europe, refining them and improving the economy of Europe, not their economy. So I will put the problem squarely on the heads of Africans. We have to emancipate our minds and understand that we cannot be used and manipulated for other people's interests. We allow them to come in and do these things. The moment we take that responsibility upon ourselves and not blame the Europeans all the time, that is where the problem will stop. Because the Europeans are not going to stop. They will continue to do whatever it's going to be in the interest of Europeans, but we are supposed to know what is our own interest and not allow them to come and manipulate us in order to get what they want. It is the same thing in Cameroon. Those people that are in Cameroon hear that, oh, if we give the Anglophones autonomy, they're going to do this, they're going to run the country. That is an idea that is being inculcated into their mind, but they forget that Anglophones are Cameroonians. We are Cameroonians. If we solve this problem, the whole country is going to benefit. The millions of franc CFA, billions of franc CFA that are going to fight a useless war are going to be injected into the economy, and where there is economic revival in Cameroon, a Yaoundé man will benefit. A Bamenda man will benefit. The man from the southwest will benefit. It is economic trickle down to the whole economy. It's not going to be a Yaoundé man that is going to benefit and the Bamenda man does not benefit. The contrary, if there is economic crisis in Cameroon, it is not going to be centered in Bamenda alone. It is going to affect the whole country as a whole. So these people understand that when there is a problem, when we allow outsiders to come in and inject our idea, they are injecting into us, we are the ones who suffer. So I just wanted to bring that point before I hand over to Ikani.
Absolutely, we were going to actually analyze that because it is very imperative. Dr. Alaja, as we are looking at the challenges of leadership, we also look at the external challenges and how this can be actually handled. Coming back to you, Presley Kane, the Pope did not only talk to the political leaders, he also addressed a message to the young people. And I know we are in the era of the Gen Z. We saw how they have been very keen, according to some pundits, especially if we're taking the example of Cameroon. We saw how the youths in October 2025 showed so much interest in politics. However, it was superficial and largely across the social media where in disinformation and misinformation actually circulated, bringing about so much uncertainty across the African, the country. We also saw the protests in Kenya that the youths actually orchestrated. But then we want to look at a politically vibrant youth that is also very intelligent and tactical or strategic in how they engage in the political life of their respective nations, so as not to probably destroy the little infrastructure that they have in their respective nations. So the Pope actually cautioned the youth not to be corrupted by easy gains, and he said they should be more of a protagonist of the future to translate into practical leadership pathways for youth, young Africans in business. So the question is, how can we now probably address this reawakened young people who have somehow, to an extent, missing the trajectory of maybe calling for reforms? We see them being used as tools by politicians and others to attain very political objectives. This is according to pundits, and which is very visible. So how can we actually, make this a vibrant population to be more very constructive or positive in their civic engagement, especially in the political sphere of their respective nations?
Thank you once more. First, I would like to say that one of the you invite you invite the theories, you invite science in your understanding of African political affairs, and somehow you really feel at a loss. You feel at a loss because it is so the systems are too powerful. They almost operate like mafiosos that no matter the model you seek to propose or suggest in how governance is done, or how democratic principles are respected, or how the rule of law is respected, these analyses almost just cut short because the system is so oiled in a way that even someone like a pope cannot somehow offer a panacea to this African realities. Now, back to your question. I think the civil society has been severely weakened in the African systems, in Cameroon in particular. I think the youths have gained enough conscience in what is operating in their societies, in their communities, and sometimes they engage well enough in community mobilization, in youth mobilization. But the tragedy of all of that is that they have to be confronted to a very, very tough system. And they are operating within a context of unemployment, within a context of poverty, within a context of uncertainty, that at some point their deployment is limited. Take just for example the just ended elections in Cameroon. As always, it came with a lot of gleams of hope, just like it was in 2018. And they thought the youths were vibed on, the youths were energized. They thought, oh, this is time to bring down the system. This is time to bring about change. They lobbied and rallied around candidates, and they hoped that, it would be an end to a system. But on the other hand, you have a system that so much understands the youth. And someone once told me that the Cameroon system understands that people are not embracing the opposition. They are mostly discontent, and when we have their methods to make them content, then they are no more in the opposition. So I think that system well understands, and now you found people engaging in the electoral process, and you found people who were lobbying in different ways, who were accused of engaging in political maneuvers to sway votes or to sway minds to one camp or the other. I think it is important that it was good to witness that energy as always, but this campaign is not, the electoral campaign is not just before the elections or during the elections, it's after the elections. And after the elections, we also saw youths of certain parts of the country, like in the northern part, who went on the streets, or in the littoral, who went on the streets to claim victory of a certain candidate. And we know the outcome. We know how it ended. You know, they were met with brutal force, and some of them were were thrown in incarceration centers, and they did not really benefit in fair justice. And this system of clampdown creates a whole atmosphere of panic and fear. And then the narrative on social media, for example, they tell you it's better to be alive than to stake your voice out there and risk being killed. And then the question of, like, for example, like the Pope would talk to the youth and say, do not engage in violence and stuff like that. We all want to hear that narrative. We are against revolutions and everything. But when you look at the way the systems are in Africa, then you are, I mean, even as an analyst, even as someone who respects the rule of law, you're tempted to ask yourself, what is the way? What is the panacea? Because you even ask yourself, the more you respect the rule of law, the more you engage on the side of the law, on the side of justice, you are not served justice at the end of the day. And then you find, that's why I say it's really hard to be an analyst of African political affairs, because when the justice system does not work, when a democratic system does not work, when reconciliation and peace does not work, you ask yourself, what are the people left with? Which path do they have to follow? Or when even the civil society wants to project their voice, we know the outcome. Or even when a journalist wants to report, wants to inform in an unbiased way, the little click, the one moment where the journalist wants to be just a journalist, wants to be investigative, we know how it all ends. So at the end of the day, we do not know, we're like running on an end road, and we do not know the way out. And that's why I said, in my opinion, the Pope served us a message of hope and called on the next generation to embrace morality, steeped in very basic values of truth, values of peace, values of love, values of togetherness. And it's only when we embrace these values from our homes, from our street corners, in our schools, that we can start talking of the next. On the current systems as we have right now, I am at a loss to even think that there's a possibility of breaking these systems that have been oiled and fashioned and built in many decades and have held so strong in different maneuvers as to how to cling onto power, as to how to silence dissent, as to how to mete out justice to the poor or to the weak. It's a very tough situation, but it's not one without hope. We think that a new generation is coming up. A new generation would hopefully be the change that we are speaking about today. And hopefully we would one day look up from a distant point and then say that there's been progress.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing a new phase or a new trajectory in the African continent that will relate or translate into real and sustainable development. We know that the continent has actually Agenda 2063 and other developmental agendas that are actually outlined. But then when we notice the past years that violence or crisis have actually increased across the African continent, and we begin to ask ourselves if actually, like we highlighted in the preamble, the geopolitical contestation, it's actually the reason why some of these the number of crises have actually increased. because according to some pundits, which I think Dr. Elijah highlighted the divide and rule. Of course, when a country is restive, it actually provides some sort of space for the hidden diplomacy, or probably some sort of acts to be taken that will actually not translate into the real development of the country, because we highlighted also the Democratic Republic of Congo and other areas where we are seeing some sort of intense fighting, including Sudan. So how then can Africa, maybe Africa's new leadership dynamics after the visit of the Pope, fine-tune the continent's diplomatic philosophy that will tactically solve some of these problems that we face today across the continent, with you, Dr. Elijah Enwaku?
The regimes that are in place are obsolete. That's just a fact. A lot of the regimes that we have in Africa are obsolete. Let's just face the fact. What do you expect the regime in Cameroon to do? What ideas are you going to give them to do? How they're going to change tomorrow? You can't change those guys. There's no way you're going to change them. I'm sorry to sound negative and bleak, but the reality is that regime needs to get out of place. We need people with different mindset, different aspiration, different mentality to come in and change the trajectory of that country. You need people who are not there for the bread and butter. You need people who are there for the people. I'm telling you that it took Botswana, one man, to come and change the country. One man. Go all over the world today. And it's an assignment we can give ourselves. Go all over the world today and see if you're going to find more than 2% of Botswana in any country. They don't want to leave. You ask a question to my younger brother here, Ikanes, about youth. Youth themselves, they have become despondent. And you're asking them, they just want to leave the country. Go to Cameroon or any part of Africa and say, where do you want to go as you finish high school and so on? They will tell you, I want to be in the United States, I want to be in Canada, I want to be in UK, I want to be here, I want to be here. Because there is no hope in the country where they live. There's this phenomenon in Nigeria called DAPA. It has become a motion, because as you're growing up, as the young people are growing up, they do not have any hope for their country. They just want to leave the country. So, and then the few that are there, they are so buried in the same corruption. I'm telling you that I deal with people in Africa, young people, that you think their ideas should be progressive. But if you talk to them, talk about the politics of the country, which they meditate in, you find them even so buried in that rotten politics in such a way that you ask yourself, is this a young man with a future talking about his country and talking about all these bribery things and corruption? He want to do this. He sees black. He calls it red because he believes that by calling it red, he's going to get some goodies or whatever from the powers that be. That's what those who are in government are fighting for. That's how they present the politics of the country. They will see black, they call it white. They see white, they call it black. Young people, you're talking about a man who has a lot of future ahead of him, but he's in tune with the decay in that country. He's in tune with the corruption that's going on in that country. So on the side of young people, we need to come to a place where we have a complete elimination of the powers that be, so that these people can begin to retune their mind to say there is hope. Then you talk about how do we get to where we're going? Yes, a lot of people, I want to pick up on something that Professor Light said, and also my younger brother here, Ikane picked up. He said, we don't want revolutions but revolutions, there are different dimensions of revolution. What we don't want is war. We don't want war. But where injustice has become the rule, people have the right to resist. People do have the right, legitimate right, to resist injustice. Because if we sit there and think that everything is going to be given to us on a platter of gold, it's not going to happen. If Martin Luther did not resist what he resisted in the United States, black wouldn't have the freedom that they have. He resisted to a point where he had to give his life for it. It was a peaceful, paciful resistance. We are not saying here that people should pick up arms. I will be the last person as the pastor to say that somebody should go and pick up arms. That's why the separatists in Cameroon, they are on my neck, because I do not agree with those their proposals. I do not agree with anything they're trying to do. You can have a legitimate concern and you spoil everything by the approach that you're going to take. That's what's happening in Cameroon with those from the northwest and southwest. Those who pick up arms, they have a legitimate concern, but picking up arms did not solve that problem. That is not the way to have solved that problem. You can have something that you want to do, you have a legitimate cause, and you destroy everything by going the wrong way. So again, the point I'm saying is, Clarice, you ask the question, what is the way forward? Number one, we must emancipate ourselves. Some of you are from Cameroon, you speak French. You hear the words, on va faire comment, on va faire comment, on va faire comment. People have just given up. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to stand for their rights. By standing for their right, we are not saying, again, I want to repeat here, we're not saying anybody should pick up arms. We're not asking anybody for war. That would be the last thing for something for me to advocate for. But we are talking about people should stand for what is right. You cannot be advocating for a good governance and you are the one who is either not doing anything about it or you're actually involved in the corruption of the country. You can't be doing that. We have to emancipate ourselves, come to a point where you have to pay the price somehow. We're not talking about people dying. You have to resist. You have to reject corruption. You have to stand on what is right. You cannot see black and a political party is telling you that, no, we changed the constitution that has become like a piece of paper. It's going to help us. We want to put this position. And people are jumping behind. Yes, it's going to help us. Young people are supposed to stand up and say, hey, has our constitution just become a piece of paper that we can get tomorrow and change this and change that and change that? They are in tune with it. They don't find any problem with this. Anybody's drinking his beer in Douala, Yaoundé, and so on, and life continues. Why would you complain? If you're comfortable with the situation, why would you complain? So we have to emancipate our mind to the point where we should not accept wrong. We should not accept corruption. We should not accept nepotism. We should not be part of the system that we are denouncing. We should stand for what is right. And then you can begin to see, look at what's happening in Senegal. If those two gentlemen did not stand up and say enough is enough, and then the young people rally behind them, we would have seen the change that is happening in Senegal. If they've joined Macky Sall and they say, oh no, let's just join him, because if we join the ruling party, even though Macky Sall is going to rule for 3 or 10, 50, 60 years, we will have our own bread in that government. Senegal wouldn't be what it is today. Those young people stood up and said, no, we are not going to be part of this corruption. They stood up, and Senegal is going through this change that we are coming. So young Cameroonians, young Africans, young Angolans, young Algerians, young Egyptians should stand up and be emancipated and stand up, and then the country will change. Other than that, it might be difficult.
Indeed, standing up the right way, and of course, doing it the right way by engaging more into understanding the political dynamics of the country without engaging just superficially or being agents used by detractors to further destabilize the respective nations, because when you look at across the African continent, we see a lot of proxy wars happening, demonizing the situation of young people to be able to attain their own objective. And this is why I come to you now, Professor Laid. We want to look at this. It's been ongoing, and even the pontiff reiterated, saying that colonization of Africa's minerals is directly linked to the violence and instability that the country is, the countries or the continent is facing at this juncture, due to the geopolitical, contestation of probably the 21st century scramble for critical mineral and oils in the African continent. So, and to solve this, so probably to bring about a common space to ensure that the presence of foreign powers do not actually bring about the vulnerability of the African continent, it is imperative for Africa's leadership to refine or maybe fine-tune its diplomatic engagement, its foreign policy principles, and then how can we actually attain this, Professor Laid?
Now and observing throughout the continent and throughout the world, we have so many interference, whether in Africa or in Middle East, in Asia, in the Gulf states and so forth. We have still faced difficulties of because foreign countries or I would say international power, they always condition their support, their help, their aid and donation by imposing some rules. And this is one way or the other to recolonize Africa. Unfortunately, so many countries in the continent do accept this equation, and it's at the expense of their own, at the expense of our own liberty, our own freedom, of our independence. I read about a couple of weeks ago, or a day, I would say days ago, some African countries within this part of Western African region have accepted the training by the French soldier. I mean, how on earth they still accept this? I think they should stop this. They should put an end to any kind of military foreign intervention or interference. Okay, we do accept through partnership, through economic partnership, and that what is going on right now. But if it turns to be a military one, it means these countries, African countries are still under colonization one way or the other. Now we should live, I think, united behind the African Union, and the African Union should be strongly enough, its power should be strengthened to negotiate, to mediate, to set up partnership with all countries in the world. I mean, blocks. That we should have strength of our unity, our own alliance, and this is, I think, we should believe in what is decided by our unique and I would say African Union leadership. And if we want to succeed, because let's make it clear, of course, we have some kind of framework and agenda that have already been in operation by the African Union. It is not all bleak or gloomy, but no, we have to work together. Of African governance, now we speak about the new review, the new African peace and security architecture. So they are moving in Addis Ababa, the headquarters of African Union. People are working hard to safeguard the unity and the efficiency and the strength of African Union. We have also this question of African Continental Free Trade Area. So we have so many frameworks, so many projects, so many agendas. We should stay behind the African Union in its way of running and managing its leadership and setting alliances with all continents. I understand now African Union, African continent, through the South Africa is a member of the G20. This is okay, but it is not enough. We should act as unified and united bloc to speak on equal terms with different alliances, right? Of course, European Union or any other Gulf country in the Gulf cooperation. So Arab League. And so I remember we had in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, there was extremely, very, very important partnership between African Union, or I'll say at that time it was the Organization of African Union, with the Arab League. It was very, very peaceful, and we had a lot of participation and contribution from the Arab League to invest in Africa. All this has gone, and it was replaced by a new form of colonization by European Union, which they imposed their condition. They conditioned their cooperation partnership by imposing their rules on what they call human rights, what they call freedom of the press, media freedom, and so forth. We should remove all these sequels of the colonization from our mind, and of course we have to be one sequence with ourselves and to rely on our capacity first of all.
Professor Laida, and then with you, Presley Kane, we are looking at the era of shifting alliances. According to some pundits, the Pope's visit just demonstrated that the Vatican is actually aligning with the global South and the new dynamics of international relations, and also globalization, stressing on respect for sovereignty and other, a win-win relationship that will make the world a better place. Do you think there is some sort of relationship between this shifting alliances and the Pope's visits to Africa? And of course, how strategic is that for the African continent, the Vatican, and also stakeholders of the global South?
Thank you. First and foremost, the Vatican is the Pope represents the Vatican in two dimensions. First, as the leader of the Vatican States, and secondly, as the head of the Catholic Church. And today, of course, there is this there is this how do you call it? You use the word this different alliances. The alliance is building up, and I don't think the Pope or the Vatican is positioning itself on the global South, so to say. But the church it's on a crusade mission to preach the gospel to everybody, not just to the people on the South, to talk about issues that are not right, to condemn human values that do not really contribute in building a holistic humanity. And of course, the global South is mostly facing much of these vices as poverty, as injustice, as the violations of human rights. And in the words of the gospel, the cry of the poor is always listened to. So I don't think the Pope's visit or has anything to do with sidelining with the global South, but the message, the gospel message, serves a purpose of reminding these countries, which unfortunately are found mostly in the global South, to practice certain values as to reposition themselves on the legitimate banquet of human progress, and to 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 function in a way as to be respectable, as to do business on the basis of legitimacy, and this point could be buttressed by how the Pope, for example, criticizes the Trump administration, not because it's not because it's a Trump administration, but because the administration is currently operating in a way as to question human values, human dignity, for example, in the way in the way they crack down against illegal immigrants. The Pope had his say on it. It's not like the Vatican or the head of the Vatican is meddling with the internal affairs of a sovereign state as the United States, but simply saying the methods used by this immigration organ, the ICE, is not proper, and it does not value human dignity. So I think we do not. I mean, the Pope is just an added voice to what leaders from other nations, be it the sovereign leaders of sovereign states or representatives of the United Nations have consistently preached on countries of the continent. But I think the power lies with our systems. The power lies with us, the civil society, the people, the individuals, the politicians, to take upon themselves the responsibility to drive these nations, these countries to progress, and to enable to put into place structures that can compete with global economies, that can have a say on global fora. I think that's my take on it. But to think that the Pope is sidelining with the countries of the South would not be true, because in as much as we do not see the Pope's visit as one of a diplomatic or economic interest, but we see it more as a message, as a crusade, as a clarion call, because, as I said at the beginning of the program, the Pope has been a missionary in the African continent. He knows the realities of the continent. He knows the eroding truth of the African continent, and I think he had the best words for the people of this continent, and it's upon the people of the continent to take the message and to act upon the message.
Absolutely, yeah. How well did the people of the African continent receive these messages that carried empathy, messages of reconciliation, and of course proper leadership that would translate into real development, of course, with basic necessities for the African continent. We are almost concluding, but we continue to look at what matters. The question that we asked at the beginning was if the visit will create an impact that will, affect positively the leadership pattern or dynamics of the African continent. I start with you, Dr. Elacha Inako, from all that has been said and analyzed, do you really think that there is hope that in the nearest future, we're going to see some changes, major changes, as a result of the Pope's visits to the continent Africa, precisely to Cameroon, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, and Algeria? I know you quite mentioned in your preliminary statement that these countries were not just chosen haphazardly, it was strategic. Can we see the rebirth of leadership pattern with this maiden visits of Pope Leo XIV to the African continent?
Clarice, if there's one thing that's regrettable in some of this country is the complete destruction of the civil society and even the opposition. Because these are the people that are supposed to pick up the tabs. The Pope has come, he has given a global audience or global exposure to some of these problems and crises. The civil society is supposed to pick up the tabs from there and see how they can organize themselves and put pressure on the government that be. Whether it's in Equatorial Guinea, we have not talked so much about Equatorial Guinea. A country is about close to 2 million people with huge deposit of oil and gas, living in poverty. It's completely, I do not unacceptable. I can't comprehend that Equatorial Guinea, with a huge amount of deposits of oil and gas resources in the country, you find places in Equatorial Guinea where the poverty level is as worse as we have in Haiti here in North America. So we're not talking about some of those things, but the point I'm trying to bring out here is whether it is Equatorial Guinea, whether it is Cameroon, whether it is Algeria, the civil society is supposed to pick up the tab from there and to run with it, put pressure on the government. Number two, the church, the Pope is a Catholic. The Catholic Church has a lot of influence in a lot of these countries. Well, maybe with the exception of Algeria, but Cameroon and Angola and Equatorial Guinea, the Catholic Church has a lot of influence. It is true that the church is not supposed to go, political and start campaigning for this, but the church has a voice. If the church is silenced in the face of injustice, war, corruption, and they say nothing, the church becomes complicit. The church should pick the message of the Pope and continue to push for changes in those countries. And number three, the opposition. The opposition in those countries. Oh, the case of Cameroon is a sad one that the opposition is completely decimated. There is completely no opposition in Cameroon as we speak, and they cannot do anything. The Pope has come and given you guys a global perspective and global exposure to some of the issues. Why not pick on that and run with it and say, this is what is happening in our country. We demand change. And, people, there are some people that will tap somebody like Weber with the separatist forces. But I can tell you that Weber, what he did in the Parliament of Cameroon brought to the forefront some of the issues that we have in Cameroon. Why can't others do the same? You don't need to pick the gun. You don't need to go to the bushes. You don't need war. The power that you have as members of parliament is enough to cause change in Cameroon. They are doing nothing. They go there and take their packages after every month, and they run in Rolls Royce and give some few social media speeches here. What are they doing? The Pope has done the groundwork for you. Run with it. So, as we're running up, my message is for number one, the civil society. Organize yourself in Cameroon and help the country. Organize yourself in Angola and help the country. In Equatorial Guinea or in Algeria, and talk about the things that the Pope has already labeled out. Number two, the church. The church should be vocal to an extent. You're not vocal about advocating for any disruption and violence and guns and people taken to the street. You're vocal about the issues. God has given you the power to speak about the injustice and the issues that are happening in your community. Don't be silent. Talk about them. Number three, the opposition should wake up. The opposition is dead in some of these countries. They should wake up and take on the mantle, and we will begin to see positive change. Yes, when there is anarchy and corruption and all these things, it might not happen overnight, but little drops that fills an ocean. These people should wake up from slumber. And then those in the diaspora, as we are speaking here, we are providing solutions, we are providing platforms. Journalists like you, Clarice, and others, they should speak about the issues. They shouldn't be afraid. Take up the issues, talk about it. And the more you talk about it and expose the issues, we are hoping that that glimmer of hope that the Pope has already laid there, one day will bear fruits and will have change in these countries.
Absolutely, yeah. The decision will obviously come from within, and of course, it should come from within the minds of the policy makers. Of course, the message of hope should translate to the civic engagement of Africans, so as to derive more, peaceful strategies towards bringing about change rather than encouraging hate, radicalization, and other ills or vices that further, bring about stagnation of the continent. With you, Professor Laid Zaklame, it is imperative also that we look at how the economic power can be boosted. Still coming to the message of the Pope, he said, of course, he presented, some sort of an economic justice that is morally framing of economic justice to encourage African governments and the private sector, especially in terms of negotiations. And of course, we're talking about the presence of foreign companies, private sector dynamics, and how their engagements with governments can help to solve some of these problems faced, particularly by the vibrant Africans unemployment. And I think this will start from the preamble of their contract terms. So what do you have to say about this aspect of the Pope's message?
Conclude by saying that, of course, the Vatican as a state, a very tiny state within Italy, it has this missionary position. But as I said, the Pope tries to spread the good words of tolerance, but it's up to people themselves in any part of Africa he visited to solve their issue. He is here just to eliminate some of their views, to give them hope and words of tolerance, of forgiveness, of honesty, of sincerity. This is moral value which applies to all religion, and mainly Christian and Catholicism, as well as to Muslims. I think I don't think that now in the whole continent people are not of this and of their what does it mean liberty, what does it mean values, what does it mean human rights, and so forth. So he is here just to spread the good word, and it's up to these countries, of course. When I speak about country, I speak about all stakeholders, whether they are entrepreneurs, whether they are civil society, whether a decision maker. They should work together and solve the issues. Because now, as we have already spoken and noticed, now we have the return to the empire with USA, with Russia, with of course China. So. We, the people of Africa, if we don't get united to each other, we will be once again, unfortunately, colonized. Because we have to be powerful. We have to strengthen our independence. We have to maintain, of course, a good standard of working, of good wealth and good health and all these things. But this can only be done if we are sincere and if we are really implementing the values of social justice, the values of democracy, of alternative, of power, and of course respect of human rights and media freedom. And now I think we should, as we have already said again, we should work together behind the African Union and its leadership to implement what have been decided in the field of commercial trade and economic. But more importantly, we have to erect African continent as against the geopolitical stakes that is sweeping all of the world.
Thank you so much, Professor Laith. And we end with you, Presley Kane. We are looking at the regional crisis, the violence rocking the African continent. With all that has been said, and of course the message of hope and reconciliation, how do you think the African states can use this message from the Pope to position themselves in order to strengthen that continental stability, regional stability, and even enhance cross-border cooperation, or cooperation among the continent of the Africa. Remember that the Ubuntu philosophy is actually alive and resonating along across the lines, especially those preaching Pan-Africanism. But then when you look at it practically across the African continent, you see countries having diplomatic issues. We are talking presently about xenophobia resurfacing in South Africa. And when we look at all of these discrepancies making Africa so vulnerable, how then can states use interfaith diplomacy to solve this, strengthen regional cooperation, and of course stability?
I always like to say that the greatest problem in Africa is not corruption, it's not the violation of human rights, is menticide. And by menticide, I mean the slavery of the mind. When you decolonize the mind, you open doors to a whole lot of things. And that's why the Pope reminded us of what we already have. He reminded us that we have that resources are not enough, because resources are abound, whether in Algeria or in Nigeria, in Cameroon, or in Angola. Those resources are there. But what do we do with those resources when we do not have the feel for each other, when the notions of Ubuntu are mere concepts that are not practically true? So we have to align these concepts to truthful realities and restore the African or the African human dignity, to understand that when we use when we use the terms brother, it's not just those are not just words of pageantry. Those should be words that resonate, because those are spiritual words. When you visit Nigeria and call someone brother, sister, it resonates beyond just the sound of the word. So it's not enough to build governance structures within the African Union. It's not enough to have 54 nations under one regional grouping. It's not enough to be neighboring countries when you cannot put content to the meaning of Ubuntu, to the meaning of brotherhood, to the meaning of sisterhood. And it is not enough to have visions 2035, visions 2063, when you do not practically and strategically work towards that dream. And you can only work towards it when you start really embracing our common humanity, our common morality, because only then can you hope for a continent that can engage other nations on the basis of power on the basis of strategy, on the basis of legitimacy. It's only then that you can have a voice or a shared voice in diplomatic circles. When all of these are not met, we would remain in this quagmire. We would remain in this hole, and we will remain the wretched and the damned of the earth. So it is time to avoid this baseless narratives and to get to work. And the only way to get to work is the civil societies to be engaged, is the journalists to do their investigative journalism in all freedom, is for freedom of speech not to be curtailed, is for the teachers to teach freely, not teach the agenda proposed by rogue governments. It's for governments to accept that they are in power because the people wield a certain legitimacy to them, and that they are answerable and accountable to the people. When this social pact is not met, then the fine words, the fine narratives would just end in words, and concepts such as Ubuntu would be just an empty vase. So it is time for us to take the Pope's words seriously in our street corners, in our backyards, in our villages, in our towns, in our governments, and then build the Africa we want, not only for us, for our children and our children's children.
Indeed, building the Africa we want, to make Africa a center or a major stakeholder in a multipolar society that will not only serve as a zone of intervention, but will present itself as a thought leader in teaching humanity to mankind, especially along lines of migration issues, and how the resources can be as a blessing and not as a curse, and see how to cement the discrepancies across the political lines, social lines, and also most especially to have leadership that will set the right agenda for the African continent, the agenda that will teach about patriotism and also help Africans to value the African continent and focus on the positive side of the continent, and avoid being used as tools of radicalization, destabilization of the African dream. I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to the gentlemen for the insightful discussions pertaining our topic for discussion this day, as we hope that we will in the nearest future see the strong political will that will eventually transcend into a real agenda of sustainable development across the African continent, moving from slogans to practicality in the terms of engagement with one another, the Ubuntu philosophy, ensuring that the African continental free trade area is a reality that will actually benefit today's generation and the next to come. Thank you so much. And it is on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that we draw the curtains into today's edition of Global Insight, brought to you by Globus, wishing you a wonderful moment as you stay in the company of programs on the Pan-African media. Bye-bye.